All right, so for today's class, we're talking about functions and their relationships, but then we're going to focus more on the constant rate of change and issue of value, also known as the slope or the y-intercept. So I'm going to pull up my whiteboard. We talk about the slope and the y-intercept. Generally, we're talking about functions. They're in the form of y equals mx plus b. Remember, we're doing these equations. We're doing something like y equals 2x plus 6. And then you can look at this and say, oh, this is a linear function. For one, the x isn't squared. So that it's we know it's a linear function. Now, do you see the relationship between this equation and that equation? All right, so do you realize that the 2 took the place of the m, and then the 6 took the place of the b? So I want to say m is the constant rate of change, or we're going to call it the slope. And then b is the initial value or y-intercept. And then we'll talk more about what the m is and what the or slope or what the initial value and y-intercept is. So let's look at this example. All right, so I started with one puppy, and then it went to 3, and then it went to 5, and then it went to 7. All right. So if we want to look at the patterns, this is what we're talking about when we talk about linear functions. All right. We want to look at the pattern, and we realize that it goes up by 2 puppies each time. So first they had 1, and they added 2 to get 3. Then they had 3, and they added 2 to get 5. So if we wanted to write this in terms of a function using the n to represent the number of puppies, I would have an equation that looks something like n plus 2. Y equals n y equals nx plus 2, n representing the amount of puppies that are there at the time. So if there's, actually let's take out the x, we don't need the x. So if there's 1 puppy, it's going to be 1 plus 2, which is going to give you the next value, which is 3, and so forth. Does that equation make sense? Now look at this slide. You realize the equation says y equals mx plus b, right? The same equation for linear functions. And then there's a m. Just play around with it and see what happens when you move the m, because the m value can change. And then move around with the b and see what happens when you move it around. All right? So I want you to see how this y equals mx plus b equation and how the m and how the b are all connected. For this part, we're going to talk about how to write our equation. We said the equation of a line is equal to y equals mx plus b. We already know that b represents what? So if you look at the graph, we know that our b's are y-intercept, so we know it's going to be negative 19. So I'm going to take away the b, the plus b, and I'm going to put negative 19, because we already know what that is. All right? Now I have the rest of this line to figure out. I need to figure out what m is. I know what b is, so now I need to find what m is. All right? I also want to point out, if you look at your table, do you see where x says 0 and then y says negative 19? That's a good way to find the y-intercept. Wherever x is 0, whatever y is also the y-intercept. So I could have just looked at the table and say, oh, it's negative 19. B is going to be negative 19. Or I could just look at my graph and see where it crosses. Okay, now let's go ahead and try and find what our slope is. In order to find our slope, we do a thing called rise over run. Rise over run. Meaning I'm going to count from this dot to my next dot right here. From this dot to that dot. All I do is count the boxes. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 boxes going down. Now I need to count how many boxes go across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So 11 boxes going down, 20 boxes going across. So then I take M out and I put 11 over 20. But then this also has to be negative. Let's see if that's correct. Nope, because it doesn't go through all the dots. It's supposed to go through all the dots. What I could do to make this a little bit easier, if I put my slider in, I'm going to move my M until it goes through all the dots. And we'll see where we actually went, where we messed up. Let's see. There it is. That goes through all the dots, so my slope is negative 11. I would love for you to tell me what made, when we counted the boxes going down, whenever you watch this video later on, when we counted the boxes going down, what made it not line up with all the dots? I would like for you to tell me that.